The afro was legal, am I right or wrong?
That's right.
That's what they said, it was legal. We can sport an afro. All right. This man, there's a lot of brothers here. This man here's got an afro. This is an afro right here. Or somewhat of an afro. It's not big, no. But they want us to wear skinhead, what they call it, high and tight. High and tight. It's not my culture.
How would you identify culture and heritage versus the culture that's in your social surroundings, like every day?
That's a really good one.
There are a lot of ways to identify it. It just depends on what your root and your upbringing is. A lot of people go back to what their roots and what their upbringing is.
I've actually never sat and thought about it, but when I hear the two, social or cultural heritage, it makes me think about what my ancestors would expect me to do, or how the times are now and how I should be living. I don't want to say should be because that kind of fall into the social norms.
Right.
So I actually was adopted from China.
Okay.
So I don't think too much about heritage. I was adopted into a white family.
Okay.
So for me, I don't think too much into their culture and their heritage, even though I was adopted from a young age.
Right.
It was kind of just I think if anything, I'm really interested in the Chinese culture and heritage, which is something that I want to learn about as I grow older and stuff.
Yeah, kind of similar. I'm my family's Thai. I'm a first generation American. And it's kind of interesting because I was born and raised outside of Philly, and I feel culturally I relate more to the people around me, my friends from Philly. But my Thai heritage is something that's always kind of I've not felt super strongly connected with.
As far as heritage, I think it's a totally separate thing from cultural norms, so to speak, because with heritage, they have written what they want in their society and how they're gonna live. And I think a lot of people who live by social norms or cultural norms, they don't really understand that, and they want to change the heritage part.
Right.
And then with cultural norms, I agree. You're trying to live up to something, or you're trying to be something, and you're trying to stay with the times because everything's so fast. With heritage, it's the same. It changed some, but it's mostly the same.
I think social norms are what you make it, and it shouldn't be defined for you, because if you let somebody else define your social norms, you let somebody else define your morals, you let somebody else define your goals, you let somebody else define everything you want, everything that you're about.
Right.
So
Don't do that.
don't do that.
Do you feel like there's a communication gap between cultures that could be different racial cultures versus the social cultures? And if so, how could we try to come on one accord?
I do. I think about that a lot recently, especially. I think the big gap is, especially when you're talking about their language, a lot of words in other people's languages don't translate over into English or Spanish or something like that. And it makes it hard, and I think a lot of it is a big misunderstanding.
Oh, definitely.
I feel that way.
Because that's a lot with the individualist culture versus collectivist. I know especially when it comes to dating, there's a huge gap in oh, is this person right for me, or is this person right for my family?
Yeah.
Can they fit in with both?
Yeah.
And I know that goes for friends too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, I want to present this lens from the perspective of a black deaf man. How that looks, those interactions is, we do have to, code switch at times. We have to change. Sometimes we will, we'll operate in AAVE. Sometimes we'll operate in Ebonics, and sometimes we'll use black ASL when we're operating with people that we're familiar with. But it's constantly switching. That code switch is a constant sort of basis. So I've experienced autism of different sorts. And so autism is more so of this greater society that is just used to speaking auditorially, and so for me, my lack of understanding or my inability to understand means that it's a barrier of access where we end up having to have written communication in order to communicate, because many people don't understand deaf culture, the ways that deaf people live, the way that deaf people communicate. And so for us, it is often more of a necessity to code switch. And many white ASL users may have it more easily able to, to integrate or communicate with those people in those spaces. And when I'm in a black ASL space, it's much more of a communal environment that we have an understanding.
Okay, that's a very important question. I feel like everybody wants to represent their race or their culture very, very well. And depending on your nature, depending on your upbringing, depending on what your experience is, you may have only learned to become what your environment has brought you around. And that may not be what your history or your ethnicity is.
Right.
And that could be a big difference and a culture shock for a lot of people.
When you're trying to be seen or heard about something, you can't expect everybody to understand where you're coming from, or like the place that you're coming from, or even you just can't expect certain things from people. And I think that's what people miss when they're like having rallies or like protests or anything. They think that, or they expect that people are going to hear them and like be like, oh yeah, I'm for this. When in reality, that's really not how it works, because everybody has disagreements and not everybody understands where you're coming from.
As long as you're meaningful behind your intent, then I feel like, and you're really passionate by whatever you're saying, use your voice. And it's easier said than done, but using your voice will help you be seen and heard. Just being true to yourself and everything will fall in line.
It's alright. I just told you.